as we get into the winter months, there's something super cozy about being inside with a candle lit and maybe the sound of a fireplace on your TV and just the overall insulated feeling of delving in to a really big book. Good morning, my name is Karen, I'm the Libranaut, and I like to explore all different types of books. And lately I've been reflecting, since my last TBR jar draw, about all the big books that I have read and want to read. In this reflection, I went back and looked at books that were over 550 pages, and I thought about whether or not they were worth reading. The time and the care spent in that length was worth the amount of time and maybe brain power and how immersive the world was that the author brought to life. I did come across a number of ones that I thought were not worth the length. They needed to be edited or pared down. They were just too much. There were too many ideas and it was a bit of a scattershot. So these ones I've decided to focus on are the ones worth reading. Let me know if you'd like to see the video of all the books I think are not worth reading. I'm going to start with fantasy science fiction. My most recent read of this entire stack is Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson. I think he tends to write larger books, but I really enjoyed the world that he created. This is a book about people leaving Earth and being the first pilgrims, if you will, to colonize Mars. And it's all about their struggles and the way that they are able to build up society. And it goes through time leaps. So you get the initial setup and then you jump forward 20 years and you get all of the different discussions about how to build and run a society. And there's a lot of idealism in there. There's a lot of nihilism as well. There's so much to sink your teeth into. The biggest critique I think I found in reading many people's reviews was that maybe it wasn't as realistic as it could be. And I'm just like, you know what? For what it is, just go with it. Like, you don't have to. I understand for hard sci-fi readers, they want the science to be accurate. And sometimes authors just have to fudge things just a little bit for a little bit of drama or a little bit of creativeness. I have the next one of this series on my list. I just noticed I have a bit of a color theme, so let's go with the same color. This is The Red Knight. This is by Miles Cameron. Miles Cameron also writes historical fiction. His real name is Christian Cameron, but this is his fantasy writing name. This is a massive series. I have the whole series over here, and this is the first book. The thing that sold me on this book, the pitch, was a mercenary knight, the Red Knight, goes to a nunnery to protect it from invading dragons. And I said, I'm sold. Now, maybe 40% of this book is following the Red Knight, but we are also following the capital and the king and the queen as they're having political and personal issues. There is also other characters that are sort of the overall arching villains that will emerge later of this dark magic, this I think they call it wild magic that is creeping up on civilization. I believe this book is totally worth it. Now, it is a fantasy where there is a large, large cast of characters, and every chapter follows a different character with their own players, and it weaves together all this twists and turns and how people are related to one another. And he does it so magnificently. And there are such cool creatures in this world. Miles Cameron is a reenactor, and he knows battles and fighting techniques so inside and out that these are some of the most realistic battles and skirmishes that I have ever read. Would highly recommend, and 100% worth the length. Keeping with our color theme, we have Jade City. This is a fantastic fantasy. I want to say kung fu. There's a proper term for it in China, and I'll put that here. Kung fu magic with jade, set in a place like Singapore, kind of Hong Kong feels. This is definitely like mafia families vying for power, and we're following the main family. We're following the four siblings, if I remember correctly, and how they are fitting into the world and the rise and fall of their power. Jade, the more you wear, enhances your abilities. So it might be your ability to notice things and observe, and your heightened senses, or your ability to move and fight. And it's so cool, and it is complex. I read the second one and I loved it. And Jade Legacy, I think is the third one, is on my list of reading for next year. This last one I had to put on my list because I think it is one of her best books. I have to kind of recommend the entire series because the book that I want to recommend is the middle book. This is the ACOTAR series. I did read this as it was first coming out. It has been a while for me, but I know this book series is still going strong and is really popular. But I think her strongest book is still A Court of Mist and Fury. Without giving too much away, Feyre is a human who falls in love with the fairy world and kind of gets totally embroiled in all of their personal vendettas against each other and revenge plots. And the thing about this book that really hits it out of the park is that it's about getting over a relationship and maybe realizing that it wasn't as golden as you thought it was, and maybe it was perhaps a little toxic. So it really helps with, if you've ever been in any kind of relationship, really, the growing out of it, the grieving process, and then the growth. This is also a very romantic book, and it has a really fun pairing in it. I'll just say that. Yes, okay, you have to kind of read the whole series, but this is kind of one of those series that just flies by. You can literally sit down and it is like popcorn. It is so worth the length. Classics. Every year I like to challenge myself with some sort of a classic that is a bigger book. Sometimes it's a modern classic, sometimes it's ancient classic. I am working on the Shahnameh right now. Not very far into it. Let's start with the OG revenge plot, and that is the Count of Monte Cristo. This is fabulous. It is wonderful. I would caveat that there are some sections that are just a little dry, but here's how I got through this. I listened to this book on audiobook, and this is my biggest tip if you struggle with getting into classics because the syntax is just a little bit harder to get into. So what I did with this one is that I went back and forth between reading with my eyeballs and reading with my ears. It helps me get the feel of the author's writing style. Now, Dumas wrote this as a serial, so he would release section by section in a newspaper, and he would get paid by the word. Now, you will get some conversations that kind of go like this. Did you hear about the ball? Yes, I heard about the ball. Were you invited to the ball that's tomorrow? Yes, I was invited to the ball that's tomorrow. Well, maybe we should go to the ball together. I think that's a fabulous idea. So tomorrow we'll go to the ball together. And it is a little bit wordy, but 100% worth reading the incredible journey that the main character goes on. He is the golden boy. He's got the girl, he's got the promotion, and then his enemy rats him out for some sort of a crime that he didn't do, and he gets thrown into jail. And he befriends someone in jail, and that friend teaches him a lot of things. And then leaves him his fortune. So when Dantes escapes, he is able to go out in the world, remake himself completely, and wreak havoc on the people he deems betrayers of him. So it's a whole story about him just getting his revenge. And it is so sweet and so delicious. And there's a movie that you could watch afterward, and I remember the movie being really fun and kind of cut out the extraneous stuff, but this is 100% worth the read. If you ever in your lifetime want to read a big classic, this is the one I would recommend. Woo, this is a chunky one. This is War and Peace by Tolstoy. I read this a number of years back. Now, I didn't like this that much. I'm not gonna lie. Tolstoy likes to make it so that you definitely know what he's trying to get at. And I got it. I really did. I understood the whole idea of it. Now, it is still 100% having read, because you get the feeling, the culture, and the mindset of Russia. Makes everything that you've ever read about Russia make sense. So if you're kind of confused at what's kind of going on right now, there are a number of names that kind of get confusing. So if you're able to find a reader's guide or walk through this with a discussion group, I think this would be fantastic for you to explore. This is a great challenge book to push yourself and just experience life through another lens. Okay, I've mentioned it enough, but I have to mention it again because I was surprised and blown away with how much I adored Moby Dick. I have always looked at this book as kind of like, oh, okay, whatever, like it's like the book. And this is sometimes sold as the greatest American novel. Now, I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I think this is an incredible snapshot of this time period. Now, I think you can get abridged versions where it's just the adventure, the ship and its captain's revenge on the whale. There is a white whale that, I don't know, sunk a ship and the captain and took the captain's leg, and now the captain is just seeking revenge on this whale and wants to kill it, basically. You hear the phrase all the time, chasing the white whale. It's sort of a futile thing, but we get to experience this but also interwoven between are all of the historical contexts for the whaling industry. So you get anywhere from the construction of the ship, all of the equipment used on board, how crews are constructed, the hierarchy of the crew, and as well as how they harvested things and processed things and what they used them for. And I ended up Googling so much about whales after this. Like, it sparked my interest in whales. Now, if you're an animal lover, I get it. This might be a little bit gruesome. I think it is valuable to understand the history of whaling and how prevalent it was in our society. I don't think people understand what a big industry it was. And for that, enlightening me on just the way that people lived their lives with a little bit of a revenge story in there. It was fascinating. And what I read was that Herman Melville, the author, read Shakespeare while he was reading this book. And when you're reading it, like, I flagged so much because the writing is so dense and beautiful. It is like poetry. And if you are a lover of language, I would 1000% recommend this one. Hear me out. We're talking about jumping into mindsets and worldviews, and I think this book gives you a very interesting perspective, and that is Gone with the Wind. Now, before I get into the whole thing of this book reads really smoothly. I think I read 400 pages in 2 weeks because it was so gripping and so smooth. The characters are so wonderful. So if you are hesitant on this one and worried about, because sometimes the worry is you look at a book and the size of it and you think, that's going to take me forever to read. Not if it's written so smoothly that you're instantly drawn in. It's valuable to understand, just like with War and Peace, understanding the Russian mindset. If you want to understand a little bit of the American mindset, this is a fantastic one to read for that. The Civil War, when it was the North versus the South, and this is through the lens of the South. This was written in the 20th century, but takes place in the 19th century. So it has a little bit of a rose-colored lens to it where it's romanticizing the time before. And then it explores the hardship that the South faces during the war and after the war. And I think this one, with the incredibly designed characters, with Scarlett and Rhett, the everlasting fiery passion duo, this is certainly one not to miss. And if you've ever been curious about reading this one, go for it. Just check it out. Read the first little bit and see how you do. That's my list of all of the big books that I believe are worth the time and worth the page count. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Karen. I'm the Book Liberaut. I explore all different types of books. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Bye.